And above all else, understand that there are many different ways to achieve the desired result. So again, we talk about the swing mechanics and all those things, and this is one of the reasons, I guess, why I like the particular hitting philosophy that we have at the moment, because it accepts that there are many different ways to do it. There are lots of different swings. I think, Shane, you've got a handout that relates to that, don't you?
Yes.
So there's a handout there that's got lots of photos of big league hitters and pitchers and all that sort of stuff. There's definitely some of them that have some really common themes in them, but there's lots of variation in there as well. All right, so there are lots of ways to achieve the same result, and we need to be accepting of that. So again, the example that I give is, if we were to get all the best hitting instructors in Queensland together in a room and we would talk about what exactly is the perfect swing, we would probably come up with a whole variety of different answers. And we could sit there and debate what constitutes the perfect swing, and whether we can get athletes to have that perfect swing or not still doesn't mean they're going to go out there and execute the outcome. All right? So this is where I like our current that focuses a little bit more on the outcome. Let the individual have their own style, find their own way to achieving the outcome. As long as we're hitting long line drives to centre field in that particular assessment or whatever it is, then we're doing all right. Okay, so again, just recapping, how do athletes learn? A variety of different ways. The richest learning experience comes for young athletes when they hear a quick explanation, see a demonstration, and then try it for themselves. One of the biggest challenges, as we talked about in regards to communication for you guys as coaches, is delivering learning experiences in a way that makes sense to the athlete, not to you as the coach. It might make sense to you, but it's only effective communication if it makes sense to the athlete. Pretty straightforward. All right. We did touch on constraints theory. I'm going to whiz through it really quick because we are already behind time. But when we're talking about movements, all right, so especially when we're talking about a complex movement. So a complex movement, obviously in baseball, includes the throw, the swing, and running. There's lots of other movements that are pretty complex as well, but these are three very fast, powerful movements that happen with multiple muscle groups. The whole body's working through multiple planes, all of that sort of stuff. It's quite a complex equation. Right, again, that kinetic chain, we talk about all of that sort of stuff. But what things, when we talk about movement, and then eventually when we get to it, creating a movement change, what things have an impact on the movement? The environment, yeah, perfect. All right, the environment. So, for instance, how many guys have had a guy that you've been working with some throwing drills on the flat ground that gets a concept or gets whatever it is that you're working on, but then you put them in the bullpen and it goes out the window? Or if you've been working on it in the bullpen and they seem to have something worked out in the bullpen, but then you put them in a game situation against live hitters and it goes out the window. Why do you reckon that is?
Their mindset.
Yeah, their mindset changes, their intent changes, because I'm not just concentrating on whatever it is I'm working on here in the bullpen. I'm actually out there trying to get a hitter out. Right? So the environment, their competitive environment has changed. So quite often it actually means that their movement can change. All right? So this is something that is going to affect the outcome of the movement. All right, what else? Is there anything else?
Physical makeup.
All right, most definitely. So the physical limitations of the athlete. So each athlete might have, different arm lengths, different strength, different flexibility. Some guys who don't have the range won't be able to follow through. Doesn't matter how many times you talk about trying to create a nice long follow through. If they don't have the flexibility to do it, they're not going to be able to recreate the movement that you're trying to get them to do, because they have physical limitations that won't allow them to do it. Right? So it doesn't matter. Like the other example I give in regards to that is, for instance, infielders who field the ball back between their feet. You know, particularly young kids who don't have hamstring or hip range, you know, they're going to be very narrow with their feet, and they're going to be very tall, and they're going to be very unathletic, because to get down and field the ball on the ground, they have to be narrow with their feet because they don't have the hamstring range. You know, they can't get wide and get their bum down because they physically can't do it. So it doesn't matter how many times you talk about it, they have a physical limitation that impacts their ability to create the movement that you want. So how do we address that movement change? What do we do for that?
Strength and conditioning.
Yeah, strength and conditioning, flexibility program, whatever it is. That stuff will take some time, won't it? What about this? How do we change this? If they're good in the bullpen but bad in the game, how do we change it?
Put them in more game situations.
Yeah, give them practice in that. So make sure that they know what it is that they're working on, but give them plenty of repetition at whatever it is that you're working on in the environment that you have control over, and then talk to them about those keys and how to apply them in that environment, and give them lots of experiences in that environment, in that specific environment, to help affect the movement change. Yeah, what's the other one? Well, that's the physical stuff. What is it? Yeah. So what is it they're thinking about? And generally, we call that their intent. All right. So whatever it is that their cue is, and again on the T drill, what's our intent?
Line drive with backspin.
Yeah, trying to hit a line drive with backspin. All right, so that's the intent of that task. That's the outcome that we're looking for. If you're coaching that kid and you're trying to get him to take his elbow to here and get his hands to here and all that sort of stuff, how do you think that's going to impact the movement? It's changed the intent, hasn't it? So your intent has gone away from just hitting a ball there, any way you like, just hit a ball over there, to now I want you to hit a ball over there, but I want you to do this and this when you do it. Which that change, trying to do that and that, might affect other parts of the movement, and it will drastically change the movement, and it will most definitely drastically change your outcome, at least in the short term. All right, so again, that's an intent. All right, so what it is that they're thinking about at the time. Which ones of these three things do you as coaches have the most control over? Sorry, Karen? Yeah. This one or this one? Yeah, well, I mean, in a game situation, how can you change that if he's out there pitching in a game situation? You don't necessarily. You have to put him in game situations as much as possible over time to help him develop that movement in game, in a game context. So that, again, might take some time. But what they're actually thinking about at the time, what their intent is, that's something that you as a coach have a lot more control over, and it's a lot more short-term and changeable, correct? All right. Okay, so these three things impact on the movement itself, but they all have their own influences on it. All right, so again, generally, if these two things take some time to change, as coaches, most of our movement changes come through manipulating their intent. All right, so we'll talk about that a little bit more. We need to get a wriggle on. So what we're going to do, if anyone needs to take a quick trip to the bathroom or anything like that, now's a good time. I might get Shane if you want to talk about our... I'll get Shane to talk about our hitting approach, and then I'll talk about our pitching approach. We'll try and whiz through it a little bit because we're already behind, Shano.